Welcome to the Mindset Architect podcast, where it's all about creating the life you want, the business you want, and making a real difference. Join us in unlocking the code to true success. And now your host, Tony Caliendo, Master Coach with Rethink Coaching.
Welcome to the Mindset Architect Podcast, episode number 81. I'm Tony Caliendo, Master Coach here at Rethink Coaching. And as always, I just want to thank you for being here with me today, sharing your time with me. Time is our most valuable asset, and the fact that you are sharing yours with me truly is appreciated. So today I want to talk about where we are. And what do I mean by that? From a calendar year perspective, and depending on when you're hearing this, regardless if you're at the end of a quarter or not, I think this information is valuable for you. But here we are in real time at the end of quarter one. So we're halfway through the month of March. We just have a little bit of time left in physical quarter one to achieve the goals that we set for ourselves to accomplish as we move forward throughout this year. And it's really a good time to do some reflection. And that's what I want us to talk about today, is just to spend a minute reflecting on where we are and all of the lessons and all of the things that we're going to talk about really are geared to just helping you gear up for a really successful quarter two, regardless of what happened in quarter one. And so keeping this in mind, there's always opportunity to position yourself in a way to succeed at even a higher level, even if you met your goal. Because if you've met your goal, I think we can always stretch our legs just a little bit more and take advantage of what we're doing to achieve more. So several episodes ago, I talked about this, and I want to just do a friendly reminder. We looked at the year broken down into sprints, into 90-day sprints. We talked about having a one-page business plan. We've talked about having a 3-year goal, a 1-year vision, and 90-day strategy and actions. And I just want to remind you of that in case you have fallen back into some old habits where we're just focused on end-of-year goal, and we're not really paying attention to what's happening right now and looking at it as just a smaller sprint of time and getting excited about what you can accomplish in 90 days. I cannot tell you what that has done for myself, my company, the clients that I coach, to just look at things in 90-day sprints. Usually our annual goal is big. And when we look at that, sometimes when we're in Q1 and we are just starting to gain traction, or we're maybe a little bit behind in our Q1 goal, it still feels so significant. There seems to be such a gap between where you are and where we want to be at the end of the year that sometimes that can get in your head and mess with you a little bit. So for the purpose of this episode and the purpose of as we look to things as we move forward, I'm going to invite you to think about living in that 90-day chunk of time and just focused on that, because we know if we accomplish a solid 90 days that we can carry that forward to our next 90 days, to our next 90 days, and then to our last 90 days of the year, and achieve a goal in a way that we maybe haven't done in the past. So if you aren't thinking like that, I'm just really inviting you to take a moment to think about condensing the time, doing it as a sprint, and really celebrating that and focused on that goal, that quarterly goal. So the number one thing I want to talk about, and this happened to me, early on in my real estate career. It was one of my favorite broker managers who really shined the light for me to kind of get out of this playful entrepreneur energy that I was in, to really treating my business like a business. And I can remember she walked up to me and she asked me what my goal was for the year. And I stumbled, and thank God I remembered what it was. And I shared it with her. And then she asked me what my actuals were. Like, what are your actual numbers? What about your lead gen sources? And she just kind of drilled me on critical numbers that were indicators as to if I was achieving goal or not achieving goal. And I couldn't answer the question. And I felt embarrassed, because when I really stopped and thought about it, I thought how silly that I don't know my own business's numbers, my own numbers. I mean, I'm in it doing the work. But she really helped me see that that there's an importance to knowing your numbers at all times. That at any given point, you could share your goal, your actuals, the gap you have, what you're going to do to shore up that gap, what has worked well, what, lead gen sources, what are their conversion ratios. Knowing that stuff makes such a difference in your ability to get to goal. Otherwise, we're just kind of playing around and dabbling. And then I can tell you what happens because I've seen it happen a million times. Come October 1st, when we're talking about end of year, we have an moment, not an aha moment. We have an moment where we realize that where we are compared to where we were supposed to be, and the gap between actual and goal is so significant that our Q4 is about to become miserable. And we're going to challenge ourselves to close the gap and to do things that we didn't do all year long to crush this goal. And we usually are setting ourselves up for massive failure and disappointment. So when Rhonda asked me that question, and she really drilled down with me on the importance of knowing why I needed to know my numbers, that changed everything for me. And what I find to be humorous about that is when I was in my previous corporate job with Marriott Hotels and I was an executive, I knew each of my department's numbers. I knew what each department needed to do. I was following that. I was tracking it. I was monitoring it. We were adjusting. We were making changes. And I don't know what or why it happens when we move into real estate that we treat it a little bit more casual. And we just think that if we just do some activities, we'll get to goal. And we don't measure. And I personally think for me, it was, I didn't necessarily want to know the truth, because if I wasn't achieving the goal that I set, that was all on me. There wasn't another department. There wasn't a sales team. There wasn't an operations team. There wasn't a maintenance team. There wasn't these other departments that I could say were creating the challenge. And, so all of it would fall directly on my shoulders. It's my fingerprints and my DNA all over my business. And I think that's why I chose to ignore it, because it was such a uncomfortable level of accountability for myself to really take a look at what I was truly doing. And for the first time, the spotlight was 100% on me. This was early on in my career before I had a team. The spotlight was 100% on me. Everything, every result, all of this was falling on what I chose to do or not to do. So the number one thing I'm asking you right now is, do you know your numbers? Do you know your goal? Do you know your actual? Do you know what your lead gen sources are and what you're doing consistently and what the conversion ratio is? So like an example would be my database. If my goal is to talk to 5 people a day from my database, that's great. But do I know how many dials I have to make? And then do I know how many conversations I need to have on the weekly basis to get a referral or business out of my database? Knowing those numbers, critical. Versus just saying, well, I'll call database. When we don't know, it's really hard to measure if what we're doing is working or not. And the other thing that happens when you don't know your numbers at this granular level is it really confuses your brain, because your brain's just thinking, well, I just need to lead generate. Versus you knowing I need to dial 20 dials to have 5 conversations, and I need to have 50 conversations at the end of the week, or 25 conversations at the end of the week to get a nurture or a lead. When you know that, it gives your brain this sense of peace. And when you go to engage in the activity, you show up differently, because your brain knows exactly the direction and the route we're going to go, what to expect along the way, and what to get at the end for the result. So number one, know your business. That's critically important. That can be the game changer that moves you into a success position for the rest of the year. The 5 main things I want to talk about, though, is as we're reflecting, because we really are at the end of Q1. In fact, it ended a little while ago because of our sales cycle. But really think about cultivating, resilience and positivity. And resilience is really important, because what I know about real estate, and I think what I love about real estate so much when I was in production and now in coaching, is real estate is not static. It's always changing. And, I've written and performed several contracts in my lifetime, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of contracts when I was in production, and especially when I had a team. And I will tell you, the statement that real estate is not static, is always changing, is never more true in every transaction that you do. There's always something, there's always a lesson, there's always something comes up that we've never done before. So the spirit of resilience has to be present in viewing it as an opportunity and excitement versus constantly changing. So cultivating a culture of resilience and positivity is really important because we are not static. Just when you think you've learned it, the local board you're part of changes a contract, or NAR comes out with a different set of rules, or there's just a change, interest rates, supply, all that stuff. Number 2 in cultivating resilience and positivity is just take a minute to look at what you did well. Even if it didn't result exactly in 100% of the goal that you thought you would get out of that activity, honor what you did well. I think it's important. A lot of times we always go to what we didn't do, how we failed. We look at the negative, or in my case, sometimes you avoid looking at it, but honor what you did well. Just really take a minute to say, hey, I may not have been 100%, but this quarter I was at 70%, and last year I was at a 20%. Just take a moment to reflect on that. Take a moment also to show yourself some grace. I think a lot of times we treat ourselves like a machine, like we're this machine in the back room that's just working and there's no human element to it, but there is a strong human element to what we do. So show yourself a little bit of grace if things didn't go exactly as you had planned, and just know that we've got opportunity to adjust. The other thing that I think is really important in this resilience and positive building state is really take some time and reestablish and reconnect with your goals. I think we've heard it from Simon Sinek. We've heard it from other great leaders. What's your why? What's your why? What's your why? And I think it's really, for me, when I am taking a moment reflecting where I am versus where I was supposed to be, or even if I'm at goal, really just taking a look and reestablishing that connection to the goal. What's the impact that it's going to have on me? What's the impact it's going to have on my family and friends? What's the impact it's going to have on my team, if you have a team? And then what's the impact on my legacy? Because I think we lose sight of the bigger picture of the goals sometime as to what they will do for you. We just look at it as this task or this benchmark that we have got to get to, and we disconnect from the fact that when we get there, it has an impact on you. It has an impact on your family and friends. It has an impact on your team. It has an impact on your legacy. So reconnect to those. In the one-page business plan that we talked about end of year last year, this was a really big thing to really sit with it. And what I challenge myself to do is to identify what the impact will be when I achieve the goal on those certain areas. Now, for myself, I look at that, but the one that's more important to me is my team, my family, not in that order, family first, family, team, and legacy. Because if I didn't hit goal and the impact will be negative on those folks in those areas, am I comfortable going and having a conversation with them and just saying, hey, I just need to let you know, I showed up at a 70% in Q1, which is going to have a direct impact on you, because part of the goal is to do blank with you, or to do blank for you, or to do blank in this area. And that's just not going to happen if I continue down this path. Be willing to have those honest conversations in reconnecting with why you're doing what you're doing. It makes the goals come to life. It makes them have energy and meaning versus just a number that we're striving for. So reconnect to the goals and the impact in those 4 areas: yourself, your family, friends, your team, and your legacy, to really get some emotion attached to those goals. So, and the last thing I'll say in that area about resilience and positivity is really just stay focused on the controllables. Do not get caught up in the craziness of what's going on in certain aspects of the world right now, and just focus on what you can control. Give that your energy, and it will serve you well. Number 2, assess your business practices. I know this seems crazy to say this, and it kind of ties into what I opened this podcast with, but really analyze your metrics. Know your numbers. Your numbers are your story. Your numbers are the path you're on to either get to, or to fall short of, or to exceed goal. And it's really important that you know your business practices inside and out. Much like when my manager came up to me and asked me my numbers, I would also expect if anybody came up and asked me how I get my business, I would be able to have that conversation with them about my business practices and what that encompasses and what those activities are allowing me to do to get to goal. So analyzing those metrics. how many phone calls to an answer, how many answers, conversation to a lead or a nurture. Just really, really pay attention. The other part of assessing your business practice, which I think sometimes we overlook because we just take for granted the process, whether you're in real estate or an entrepreneur in another industry, we take for granted the process. And sometimes we get a little lackluster about it. We're not maybe as excited as the client might be because it's their first time doing it, where it's our 1,000th time doing it. But really assess what level of customer service you're delivering, because that's such a key part of your business practice. If you're delivering really crappy customer service, when that transaction is done, that client's not going to ever want to talk to you again, and you're probably not going to want to talk to them. And that is not the goal. The goal is to deliver such an amazing experience that they want to stay connected to you for the rest of their life in that capacity, whether it's real estate or whatever industry you might be in, and that they're going to be your best walking billboards to refer business to you. So pay attention to the level of customer service you're delivering. Sometimes when we're shy of goal, we get a little more aggressive or needy. And it shows that we might be a little pushy because we're pushing people to do something because we got to get to a goal or get money coming in. And our customer service can, quite frankly, suck. So take a peek at what level you are delivering that customer service at, and are you okay with it? Would you want to receive that same level if you were the client versus the person leading the charge? Take a peek at your marketing, take a peek at your consistency, your follow-up, your closing skills, your scripts. Just assess all of that in that business practice. If you're having a lot of conversations but lacking conversion, pay attention to the words you're using. Pay attention to your energy. Pay attention to the thoughts you're having. Really kind of assess what's going on with that. Am I following up enough? Am I showing up consistently enough? What are my language patterns or my language skills to keep the client engaged and moving forward and saying yes? So take a peek at your marketing and really look at how that looks, as well as your abilities in showing up in terms of consistency, follow-up. Are you closing, and what your skills are? Number 3, strategies for achieving your goals, putting plans into action. We talked about this on several podcasts, so I'm not going to give this a ton of time, but going from plan to action sometimes can create a little bit of angst. And so number 1 would be just, again, looking at those strategies in a way that, are you able to put it into action? Are those ideas that you had and the action plans with it, A, are they in alignment? And B, do you know how to do it? Get really clear on how you can put those plans into action. If I've got an action item on my business plan and it's supposed to be happening weekly, and I'm not doing it simply because I don't know what to do or know how to do it, there's a huge opportunity for me to put the plans into action. Just go get some help. Go to a peer, go to a training, hire a coach, do whatever you need to make sure that you're able to put the plans that you have, these strategies that you've so meticulously created, to put them into action. Make sure that you can measure them. There's nothing worse than thinking you're doing all this activity, and then the first time you go to measure it, you're like, oh my God, I only talked to 2 people a day. I was supposed to be talking to 10, because we're not measuring, we're not looking at it. The other thing about, strategy for your achieving goals and putting things into action goes back to the 90-day sprint, but have a 3-year goal, a 1-year vision, and a 90-day strategy. I think that's really critical for getting plans into action. Again, I like melting it down to 90 days because that's easier for my brain to process. I just have 90 days. That's it. It's not 365. I'm not going to give myself a pass that, well, it's only March. I've got until December. No, I am looking at the next 90 days only. And I know when I meet that goal for that 90 days, I'm setting myself up for success for the remainder. So take a peek and make sure you always know your long-term goal, your 1-year vision, and your 90-day action strategy. And the other thing that I think is really important when we're looking at putting plans back into action, or reinforcing or refortifying the actions that we said we were going to do, is take a peek at what you've done. And I love this question. What did you do that you hope you'll do again? And what did you do that you hope you'll never do again? And I think that's a really empowering question to ask yourself when you're reflecting on the previous quarter. What did I do well? What would I like to do again? What did I not do so well and never want to do again? That is such a powerful question to ask yourself. And it's really telling of what you can do to move your business forward. Number 4, have some self-compassion. We really are hard on ourselves many times when we don't need to be. Navigate the setbacks. Just know that it's possible to have a setback. It's not the end of the world, right? It's how we respond to it, how we react to it, and what you can do to avoid burnout. So, navigating those setbacks and avoiding burnout are really important when you're showing yourself a smidge, actually a lot of self-compassion. So show yourself grace, be honest. If you can't be honest with yourself, my goodness, we've got bigger issues. Take a look at the setbacks as lessons. What caused it? Could it happen again if I don't change? What do I need to do differently? What's going on with my mindset around it? Journaling is probably one of the best things you can do in this area when you're looking at setbacks and you're looking at ways to stay engaged and not be burnt out. Hire a coach. Invest in yourself. Best thing you can do. And I'm not saying this as a coach. I'm saying this as somebody who has multiple coaches. It is truly the best way to navigate setbacks. It's the best way to avoid them, yet it's really a great place to be when you've had one and you just need a little bit of help getting out of it. Having that third party, that outside person influence and help you see things differently is huge. Avoiding burnout, I think it's really important that we do what we need to do to recharge our batteries. And I know that's such an overused phrase. And I always laugh because I think, you need to unplug to recharge. Well, that doesn't really make sense, right? You need to unplug, disconnect to connect. And so be intentional about what you do to build in some time for whether it's working out, healthy eating, date night with the spouse, date night with friends, whatever that needs to look like, that you're building in and honoring time away from your business so that you can show up completely present and not burnt out. It's really, really important. The last thing is support and network. I think, it's taken me a while to learn this lesson, and maybe it's the phase of life that I'm in that I'm getting at. But I think in our careers, we tend to flex with who we're spending time with. And it may not be the best people to be spending time with, but we do it because of where we are. And so I want you to really assess, who am I spending the most amount of time with? Because that's the truest reflection of you. If you're spending time with people who complain, who blame all of these external circumstances, who, it's woe is me, if that's where you're spending the bulk of your time with those people, that's a mirror. It's a reflection of you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be with them. You would be repelled from that. So spend some time assessing that. It's really important not to be a collector of people. I'm intentional about, I think I've said this before in a couple podcasts, is I know who's in my front row. I know who my front row people are in business and life. And I know that those are the people that will call me out on my crap, but will also be there to help me out. And so really getting clear on who those people are and that's who you spend the most amount of time with is really, really important. The other thing is assess if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You need to get into another room where people are outperforming you and surround yourself with some people in that area. It may be really uncomfortable and you may feel a little vulnerable or less than, and that's okay. It's where you're going to learn the most. So make sure your network of friends are the right people. And, I've had this discovery myself where I was like, oh my God, everybody I'm hanging around with has a crappy attitude, is blaming the economy, blaming leadership, blaming prices, blaming interest rates, blaming. And I finally at some point was like, oh my gosh, these people are horrible. And I thought, well, that's me, because I've chosen to be with that group and I'm right in that conversation with them. And so it can be a harsh awakening, but pay attention to really assess the people you're spending most of the time with and ask yourself, is it positive or negative? Are they plussing your world, or are they fueling the negative spin on it to make themselves feel better and then you feel better about things? So pay attention. Learning and training, I think it goes without saying, you should always be in a growth mindset. You should always be learning. You should always be in training, in education, and coaching. Cannot stress enough, one of your biggest supports for yourself and your network is for you to have a coach. and to have a coach that's done what you want to do. They've already performed at that level, and they can help you with your learning curve, shrink it and condense it, and then move on to the next one so that you can get there quicker and work with that coach to grow. You should always be moving forward when you're working with a coach. So really having that right network and support group is really important. So who you're spending time with, and then, are you constantly learning? You're constantly in a growth mindset? And do you have a coach? I know it's scary to write a check or put it on your credit card at the end of the month. I know it. I remember the first time I paid, this was eons ago, where I paid $1,000 a month to talk to this coach 4 times in a month. And I remember I was just sick to my stomach signing the contract. Within 90 days, I was like, holy cow, how'd I ever make it without a coach? Because the process and the journey was so fortified that the investment was back to me in less than 90 days. So really think about, from a support network perspective, get a coach. Whether it's us at Rethink Coaching, I would love that, or it's a coach at another coaching company, whatever works for you, make it happen. That's the most important thing. So as we end Q1 and we move into Q2, take some time, show yourself some grace, and really just look at this as truly, this is your truth. Whatever happened in Q1 is your truth. Regardless of the external circumstances, it's your truth. It may be how you responded to things. It may be your discomfort with things. It may be that you just fell back on old habits and behaviors. However, really spend some time reflecting on it, because as an entrepreneur, I only have me to blame if things didn't go the way that I thought they should. And when I say blame, I only have me to look at, to measure, and to internalize and look and say, what could have I done differently or better? So just really spend some time knowing that mindset's important in this game of real estate. Being around healthy people is really important in this game of entrepreneurship, real estate. Having the right strategies in place and really doing some fine tuning if you need to is critical. Showing yourself some self-compassion, looking at the setbacks and learning from them. They may sting like hell, and that's okay. Learn from it and do what you need to do, avoiding burnout. Just realize you're not a machine in a back room that's running. You're a human being, and do what you need to do to take some time for that. And then lastly, of course, hire a coach, because that will be your quickest way to pull you out and get you to goal. As long as it's the right coach, which of course at Rethink, it's always the right coach. Team, as always, I'm here if you need anything. If you've got a question about this or anything else, please reach out. If you go to our website, rethinkcoaching.com, you can register for a free 1-hour strategy call with me. You'll put in your information. That'll come directly to me, and I will reach out to you personally, and we'll get that call on the books. It's free. It's 1 hour. It can be about whatever you want. It can be about this topic or anything else that you're struggling with or you want some clarity on. I'm so happy to help out whenever I can. You can find me on all the social outlets, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, even TikTok. I'm there. You can find me there. You can Google me and get my cell phone, whatever you need to do. Just reach out. I appreciate you all for being here. Thanks for letting me go a little bit longer today than I normally do, but this is really critical for us as we're moving from one quarter to the next, that we're absolutely setting ourselves up for the best opportunity for success that is humanly possible. I always say this, whatever goal you have, I believe you can achieve. I don't think there's any goal out there that is not achievable. It just takes dedication, focus, accountability, awareness, and consistency. That's it. All right, make it a great week, and we'll see you next week. Take care. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, you must come check out the Mindset Architect Group Coaching Program. It's our monthly program where we explore the power of your mindset, help you identify what you truly want in business and life, and then help you reach those goals. Come check us out at rethinkcoaching.com/group-program. That's rethinkcoaching.com/group-program. We'll see you there.